Welcome to Murder with the Misses. I'm Darren.
And I'm Amy. And we're here for Robrt Wone, Part 2.
She put on there Part 2.
Yeah.
But first, before we get started, make sure you guys go to Spotify, hit the little bell, subscribe. That way you guys get notifications whenever a new episode drops. Also, go on to Podbean, and you can subscribe there, do whatever, but you can listen there also. We have a website, Murder with the Misses.
We have a Facebook.
No, we have a website.
Oh my God, we have a website.
Yeah, we actually do. It's through Podbean.
Because I pay attention.
That's like the joys of being with Podbean and everything, because they give you a website. They put you on like multiple platforms.
Is this a paid promotion right now?
No, it's not a paid promotion. But I actually do like being with them.
Nice.
Because it actually takes a lot of the fight out of what we do.
Very true.
Now, but also we do have a Facebook page, Murder with the Misses, on Facebook.
That I know
Go
about.
on there, share, like, subscribe, and tell all your friends about it.
Bring them on.
Yep. And just catch us on all the different platforms. Listen to our stories that we have to tell you about. This right here lives rent free in my wife's head. And then
All day, every day.
She gets to tell me about them.
Yeah.
And there's some days that I come home and I'm just like,
Why are we talking about this?
do we want to do this today? And she's like, yes.
Every day, all day.
So we do it.
I win.
Anyway, let's go ahead and get to the story.
All right. Like I said, here we are again, Part 2. If you haven't listened to Part 1, you're going to need to do that because you are going to be lost.
Yes, very lost. You need to listen to Part 1 before you start Part 2.
Part 2. Where we left off is that Robrt is staying the night with a friend from college and his two lovers. Within 79 minutes of him arriving at the townhouse, 911 is called because Robrt has been stabbed. So it's suspicious as fuck. We left with the autopsy and toxicology reports showing no drugs or anything in his system to show why he wouldn't have any defensive wounds when he was stabbed. And the lack of blood at the scene, many believe that he may have actually been killed somewhere else in the house and then staged in the bedroom.
Yeah, and the autopsy report came back showing that wasn't rape.
No sexual assault.
No sexual assault, none of that stuff. So it's all in the first story. I'm just trying to kind of catch you back up on this one. It's kind of a weird...
There's a lot.
There's a lot to it. But police brought in cadaver dogs, and they hit on two places. The lint trap on the dryer and the outside drain in the back stairwell.
Yeah.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
See, some of these details Darren is just hearing because, like you said, by the time he gets home from work and I'm like, less than what I learned today.
And I'm so tired that I'm just like, I just want to go to bed. Just let me sleep.
So, yeah, he's getting these firsthand just like you are sometimes.
Yeah, I didn't know that one. That was pretty good.
Interesting. Now, this drain had a hose, so a garden hose, that was uncoiled next to it. And it was looking like that it might have been recently used. And they tried applying a reagent to the bathroom to check for any blood that may have been cleaned up, since it did appear to the EMTs that the body had to have recently been showered and redressed. Plus, Dylan had been getting out of the shower when they arrived, so there was a lot of cleanup. They were all in white robes, looking very culty. Like, it was a very weird scene. So they did apply it, but they didn't apply it based on the directions on the bottle, so they fucked it up. Not only did they not get anything that they could use, they destroyed any potential evidence that would have been there. And it even stained the whole bathroom. So the wall, floor, toilet, sink, everything is now permanently purple. Investigators believed that the knife in the bedroom was a plant. All of his precise stab wounds were very similar and were the same depth. That indicates that the knife was plunged all the way in, so it would have had a stopping point. But this knife is 5.5 inches long, so it would have been too long if that was the narrative. Joe admitted to moving the knife, whether it was laying on his chest or if he actually pulled it out of Robert's chest, which he gave both stories. But he still touched it, and he still moved it. But there were no fingerprints on the knife. They believe that the streaking of the blood on the blade itself made it look like the blood was put on the knife, if that makes sense. And we'll go into that a little later. Couple that with the fact that he was wearing a gray t-shirt. And there were no gray t-shirt fibers that were found on the knife, even though he was stabbed through the shirt. So there's another red flag. What it did have on it was white towel fibers. So police believe that the towel was put on the blood, right? So this is the towel that Joe was told by 911 to put pressure on Robert's chest. They believe that the towel was put on the blood, and then the towel was used to transfer the blood onto the knife. So like they wiped the knife through the blood on the towel. Something else that they found in Dylan's room was a cutlery set that had 3 pieces. It had a large knife, and then it had that forked grilling thing that you use to poke meat, and then a smaller knife, which would have been a 4.5-inch knife. And that knife was missing. So if you remember, the stab wounds were 4 to 5 inches deep, every one of them exactly the same. And then you have this missing 4.5-inch knife that would have perfectly fit. Another thing that didn't fit right in the timeline. So they live in a townhouse. They call them row houses because they literally touch wall to wall with a neighboring house. And remember, Victor sees Robert, screams, and calls 911. The call came in at 11:49 p.m. Only one neighbor heard that scream. She was watching her favorite newscaster when she heard it. The issue here is that the news program aired from 11 to 11:30 that night. That leaves a minimum of 19 minutes between them finding the body and calling 911. He never mentioned anything happening in between. So it was also odd that he asked the operator what time it was. And I don't know how much stock to put into that, but that did rub me the wrong way. Like, why are you asking the operator, what time is it?
Since he got there about 10:30, that means that they found his body within an hour of him getting there.
Right. So the body was found within 60 minutes. The total time was 79 minutes from when he got there till 911 was called. But if you go by the scream, that means his body was actually found within an hour of him getting there. So it kind of changes the timeline up a little bit.
So the lady said that she heard the scream from 11 to 11:30.
Well, she heard it while she was watching the news,
Which was between 11 and 11:30.
So the very last second that she could remember or be able to hear that scream while watching that news program was 11:30.
Yeah.
It could have been any time in that time frame. Who knows when her favorite newscaster was on? She may not have been on the last 10 minutes of the show. You never know.
Yeah.
So it could have been even longer, but it's another thing that's up in the air.
And the emails were drafted at 11:05, 11:07.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
When was the 911 calls?
911 was called at 11:49. So about 40 minutes after he made that last draft, if he's the one who made the drafts, which I'm sure he was because...
Well, yeah. So, I mean, but they're saying that they didn't hear a scream until around
11:30.
Yeah.
At the latest, yeah.
So that might have just been whenever it happened.
Right.
So that would be more in the timeline.
But you got to think, too, this was when he was found.
Yeah. That's when they're saying that he was found.
Right.
Yeah.
Because some people do speculate that that scream was not when they found the body, that was actually him screaming.
Oh, the guy screaming because he's getting stabbed.
Right.
Gotcha.
And that Victor offered up that he found the body and screamed to cover up for that noise that anybody may have heard.
I got you.
So,
There it is.
yeah, it comes together. So what they're saying is the intruder would have had to come into the house.
Yeah.
And this is a stranger likely, so they did not know the layout of the house. They had to come in undetected. But remember...
All right, well, excuse the noise in the background because right now we're in Oklahoma, so you don't know whether it's going to be sunshiny bright or rain or snow or sleet or tornadoes last night. We had 20 of them touch down around our area.
Yes.
So if you hear noise, background noise and everything, I'm sorry.
We thought it was our air conditioner, so we literally stopped recording.
Yeah, we actually paused it because I thought I didn't turn it off.
But it was rain.
Yeah, I took the headphones off, and yeah, it's rain. So
it's so loud.
You can only soundproof a room so much.
Nature.
Yeah, it's just what happens. But anyway, go ahead. Proceed with the story.
I digress. So the intruder had come into the house, likely not knowing the layout because they're probably a stranger. So they come in undetected. They find a knife. So they didn't even bring their own weapon. They make their way quietly up the creaky ass stairs, find them a victim, stab him 3 times, inject him with needles, and then make their way back downstairs and leave within 23 minutes, which I could say might be possible if you knew the layout of the house. But I don't know about all that.
Yeah, true. That's pretty tight, though.
Yeah, that's a pretty tight time frame for a stranger. And I don't think...
especially somebody that does not know the house.
Right, exactly. Because...
But I guess if you go into that house, like you said, they're what are those houses called?
Townhouses, or there's row houses.
Row houses. So, I mean, you're pretty much either coming in the front or back.
Yeah, there's only 2
and
entry
it's pretty
points.
much up.
Yes, it's built up.
Yeah,
not out.
So you pretty much either in the living room, kitchen, or you're going up.
Right.
So
it also had a basement that they were renting out, but the person wasn't there. They didn't go down.
Yeah, so I mean, but there's still a tight timeline.
Very tight.
Timeline there. So
very tight. And when the 3 men left the police station, they did not return to the townhouse. I mean, obviously it's a crime scene. But someone did come in and take a TV from it. But they believed that this person had a key. And when they asked Joe in interrogation if anyone had a key, he said maybe a few contractors, but that was it. Yet it was found out later that his brother Michael is the one who came in and took the TV. So either he had his own key or he possibly used one of the 3 men's keys. And I mention this because Michael was studying to become a phlebotomist at the hospital at the time. That means he had access to needles, medical equipment, and drugs. And Michael had perfect attendance until the night that Robrt died. That was the first time he had missed. He was absent that evening. He said that he'd spent too much time with his nephews and would be late, so he just decided to skip that day and go home and have dinner and watch TV with his boyfriend. It took about a year before Kathy went to Robert's law firm asking for help.
Hang on.
Yeah.
So he said he skipped that night to go have dinner and watch TV.
Right.
But he had to take the TV from...
No. That
was a different guy.
No, same guy. It's just he took the TV later after Robrt died. But the night that Robrt died, he went home. Maybe his TV went out and he was just like, hey, I know where one's at.
During dinner, his TV went out. So he's like, oh, I'm just going to go and grab my brother's.
Days later, weeks later, it was later.
All right.
Wow. But it took about a year for Kathy to go to Robert's law firm to ask them to help out. And they held a press conference pleading for the men in that house to come forward with any information that they may have. So at this point, it's safe to say she no longer believed those 3 men. But also at this point, these men were living in Florida. They were getting way too much attention in D.C., so they moved to escape the public eye. In 2007, authorities decided to try to get some answers. And they arrest Dylan first. Then they arrest Joe and Victor, charging them with obstruction of justice, conspiracy to obstruct justice, and tampering with evidence. So since they can't get them on murder charges, and they don't want to ruin it with the double jeopardy law, they decide that they'll indict them on this, and maybe some things will come out in trial that they can use to get them on the murder. They made the affidavit public, showing the extent of the sex toys, bondage stuff, and porn. So people really started looking at this differently. It clearly looked like Joe was in 2 different relationships, not just one family, as they called themselves. And that especially Joe and Dylan really leaned towards the darker side of BDSM, where they were also getting pleasure from pain, if you remember from the first part.
But the defense was able to get all that thrown out of court. The judge didn't see how any of that affected the case of conspiracy.
Right. So they're like, all their sexual activities has nothing to do with covering up a murder. We'll see. So they were trying them for the evidence, or lack of evidence, I should say. So not the murder, covering up the murder. Well, there was suspicion of some type of torture or sexual assault. That didn't have anything to do with planting a knife at the scene. And it would be 4 more years before the bench trial, so it takes us to 2010. And it wasn't a jury trial, like I said. It was a bench trial, so just a judge was hearing this case. And prosecution focused on 3 things. So you've got the intruder story. The backyard had a 7-foot wooden privacy fence around all 3 sides, with 1 gate that had a deadbolt lock. While the back door was open when the police arrived, the deadbolt on the gate was still locked. Defense came back saying that the intruder scaled the fence, came through the unlocked door, and then did what they did inside. They even had someone scale the fence to show that it was possible. They also said that the morning after Robrt was found, A neighbor told police that they had one of those turtle-shaped sandboxes where the shell is the lid, and it was up against the shared fence. And it looked like someone had crushed the lid by standing on it or landing on it when they jumped over the fence. But she said the cop just told her, "Don't worry, we already have the people involved." The fence went on one step further and had someone reach their arm into the mail slot of the front door from the outside, and they were able to unlock the door and walk in. So they were even showing that someone was able to come in through the front door. But the men never mentioned that the front door was unlocked when they opened it to watch for the EMTs, and they were adamant that that door was locked before they went to bed. That would mean that the intruder would have had to remember to lock it back when they fled. Prosecutors say that there were cobwebs and pollen all along the top of that back fence. And if someone had scaled over it to break in and then back over it again to leave, that the cobwebs and pollen would have been disturbed, and none of it was. Not to mention how unusual it would be for someone whose only intent was to murder someone, not rob them or anything else like that. Why would they go in without a weapon and just hope that they had something conveniently laying around the house? And we've also mentioned the 100-year-old creaky stairs to the second floor. They've all said that you couldn't go up those stairs without a creak. But the layout of the second floor shows that at the top of those stairs, right in front of it as you're walking up, is Dylan's bedroom door.
And that means that the intruder went past that door, which was Dylan's room, and hung a sharp right and went to the other end of the house to murder Robert, which was the second room.
Right, on the complete opposite end of that floor. So it'd be really weird to go past that and straight to Robert. The second focus was on the blood. Now, we have talked about the blood, or lack of it. So we know how the prosecution presented for that. Defense brought on forensic scientist Henry Lee, who true crimers know was involved in the Scott Peterson case, the OJ case. He's done a lot. He's very renowned. And Lee said that the missing 2/3 of the blood was internal. His body basically digested it or absorbed it, and that he would have died instantly because of his wounds. The ME said he did not die instantly, that he was alive for several moments after he was stabbed. And finally, the knife. We've covered this too. Prosecutors believed that the knife was a plant. It was not the correct size for the wounds, and it looked like the blood was put on the knife. Plus, the handle was wiped, so there's no fingerprints on it, even though Joe said he touched it. Plus, they questioned where the missing knife from Dylan's cutlery set was. Defense asked Henry Lee, who described it as like dipping a knife into a ketchup bottle, in and out, and said the streaking pattern was consistent with someone being stabbed.
Dylan's mom testified that she had given Dylan that set, but had kept the small knife to herself. Oh, what the fuck ever. Kept it to herself. Here's
what they said.
Here's this set of 3 knives, -1 because I really like it.
I really, really like that knife.
What the fuck ever.
And who gives a partial present? Like, this is for you, but me too, okay?
I've heard of re-gifting, but come on.
Right. She literally got on the stand and said it, and that was their excuse for why that knife wasn't there.
Bullshit.
So let's go to what the judge said. The judge said that there was no proof of an intruder, but there was no proof that there wasn't an intruder. She said that the men didn't show actions consistent to someone whose friend was just murdered by a stranger in their house in the middle of the night. She tore into the character of these 3 men, but she did believe Henry Lee that the knife on the nightstand was in fact the murder weapon, and that Joe had pulled it out of Robert's chest, but also said that he likely wiped it on the towel. But she did not believe that they intentionally delayed calling 911 or obstructing the investigation. And while their morals could be questioned, there was reasonable doubt. And since everyone is innocent until proven guilty, she found them not guilty. I do also want to mention here that Henry Lee was later found liable, like literally last year in 2023, for fabricating evidence in a murder case. His testimony got 2 men convicted in a murder back in 1985, and they had the convictions vacated in 2020. So now a lot of his stuff is being put under question.
Kathy did file a civil suit in 2011 for $20 million against the three men, and all of them pled the fifth. Of course they did.
Yeah, they would not talk.
That was that one lawyer telling them what to do.
Listen, if I needed to have defense and I had money, I would call this lawyer, I think. He's pretty good. And they did settle out of court for an undisclosed amount of money, and that went into a nonprofit trust. And there have still been no arrests for this murder to this day. A theory that I'm seeing a lot online mentions blood play. So it's the sexualization of someone bleeding for people who are turned on by blood. And it kind of fits here if you doubt that his body digested 2/3 of its own blood. And you have at least two people that are really into the painful, darker stuff. One of who has a brother who is a phlebotomist, and you have someone who's dead and missing all their blood. So you've got resources to help you figure this kind of stuff out and how to do it. Coupled with all three of the men showering immediately before EMTs arrived. So what were they washing off so fast? Was it blood? And they never mentioned taking a shower. None of them. I don't know why the cops didn't push that further, but so even if Robrt wasn't sexually assaulted, he may have been used in their blood play. I don't think that can be ruled out completely. Definitely something that needs to be looked into. And there's also speculation that he could have been a willing participant in something with Joe and Dylan. Now, when they were in their interrogations, they all three were like, he's totally straight. He's the straightest man you'll ever find. He's happily married. We've never had any kind of sexual contact with him. You know, they were very adamant that he was a 100% straight man. But Joe and Robrt had met in college and been friends for some time. So Robrt may have had some type of knowledge on what Joe was into. Maybe he was curious, or maybe he had had encounters with Joe before and they tried something that went horribly wrong this night. But none of the communications between Joe and Robrt, like texts or emails where they were setting up plans for him to stay the night, none of them showed anything other than a friendship. There were no plans for anything else besides him just sleeping there for a few hours to go back to work. Some people believe that he actually died of suffocation and was stabbed after to support the intruder theory that they had come up with. Since cadaver dogs only hit on the dryer and the outside drain, could it be that something had some fluids on it, like another towel or one of the mechanisms or toys that they had hosed off outside, then use something to dry it, or if it was a towel itself, throw it in the dryer, and that's why it would hit on the lint trap. But either way, it's a red flag.
There's a lot of theories, which is what makes it so hard to know exactly what happened.
Yeah, it could be a lot of different things, so many different things. But it's all, none of it adds up.
No, none of it adds up on this. I mean, it just, I don't know. I just think that there's something they're missing.
There's definitely something. I do not believe the intruder theory.
No.
But the problem that they're running into is there's three other people. You can't.
Oh, yeah. No, you got three people's word against nothing.
Nothing.
I mean.
Just some shitty timelines, and
yeah,
their stories don't quite add up.
So whenever the intruder left out the back door, they said they locked the back door back?
No. So the back door was actually still open when the cops got there. The thing that was locked was the gate on the fence.
Oh, okay.
So
that's
that
what
means
they're saying, that they would have to unlock it and then lock it back, and that's highly unlikely.
They're just saying that was the front door. If they had come through the front door, they would have had to lock it back before they left. Okay. The back door, they're saying that's why they scaled the fence, is because you couldn't unlock that back.
None of the pollen or
nothing was disturbed.
Cobwebs or.
I saw the pictures. It's literally just there.
Yeah, nothing was disturbed.
Nope. But then you got that lady with the turtle.
Yeah.
But that could have been anything. Anyways.
Yeah.
And I watched a documentary on this, and the federal prosecutor, Glenn Kirshner, said at the end that when he dies, the first question he's going to ask God is, who killed Robrt Wone? Producers asked defense attorney Bernie Graham, the one I said that I'd probably hire if I needed to, if he thought that Dylan did it. He asked, why Dylan and not Joe or Victor? The producers say, well, Dylan has no alibi. He was on the same floor as Robrt, and the intruder would have had to go past his room to get to Robrt. And Grimm said, gun to my mother's head, I would say it's Dylan.
Yeah.
Well, now Joe and Victor still live in Florida, last we know. Dylan did leave the throuple and is now happily married. And Joe and Dylan did change their names to
Of
avoid
course.
the publicity. Victor stayed the same, but they opted to change.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's where we're at. We're still waiting for something to happen
Yeah.
because it's obviously unsettled.
Well, we'll keep our eye on this case, and if anything comes up, but
I was just glad they didn't call this one a suicide, too. We do a lot of those.
oh yeah, when they're obviously not.
Obviously not.
Yeah.
If you have any information on this case, please call 202-727-9099.
All right. Well, that was it for the part 2. And make sure you guys check us out on Spotify. Go check out our Facebook, like, subscribe, and share. Tell your friends. Make sure you hit the little bell so you get the new notifications when new episodes drop. All right. We'll catch you guys on the next one.
That was nice. Bye.